Hello and welcome to the very first ever live edition of Building Minnesota RØKKR. I'm Ashley, aka Midnight, the director of content here on the team, and we've got none other than my amazing co-host for this is Brett Diamond, the COO. What's up, Brett?
What's up? All right, we're doing this live. No pressure.
No pressure, dude. We can't mess this up, and we can't say the wrong thing. But we wanted to get on today to kind of do this live to not just to like say like I really love that gif or that clip of the guy who's like F it, we'll do it live. I love that like mentality, so that's kind of the mentality behind it, but also just wanted a really good touch point to talk with the chat, talk with the fans about what I think is like one of the most exciting, mentally and emotionally draining, crazy times of year. It's the Call of Duty League off season. It's Rostermania. It's everything. So just kind of wanted to get on here, share a little bit about like what happens now that the season is over, and just yeah, answer your guys' questions and say what's up. So shout out to X Punky, Devin, Corey's in the chat. What's good? Jess is in the chat. Shout out Jess. And yeah, we'll just get this thing rolling. Brett, talk a little bit about. And obviously, if you're listening to this after the fact, shout out to you. Thank you so much for listening on iTunes or anywhere that you can listen to podcasts. Appreciate you. But Brett, talk a little bit about like obviously our season ended. I don't want to talk about where we placed. I'll let you say it. I'm not saying it. Didn't have a great end to the season, but talk a little bit about how our season ended and kind of what happens next for us.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's good that we're doing this live because if we tried to do a Rostermania podcast and tried to clip around all the stuff that we'll say that we probably shouldn't, it would take days and days. So we're just gonna wing it and no controversial topics today, right? I'm sure it'll be easy.
Yeah, we'll definitely not say the wrong thing and definitely go against any NDAs, embargoes, anything like that. It'll all be good. We'll be fine.
It's a lot easier than it was last year when the name hadn't been announced and the number of teams hadn't been announced, and you had to just constantly be checking everything that you said on every podcast and any media. But no, it's interesting because last year's Roster Mania was just so insane with every player in the league as a free agent, and you know most of the teams were new. Obviously, we were new. I mean, we talk about it all the time. It's amazing to think back to when we were in, looking at the first roster construction details together, and it just seems like years ago. But look, there's no denying the fact that as a team, we have higher expectations than where we finished the year, right? Like finishing ninth, 10th is never going to be satisfactory for us as an organization. It shouldn't be satisfying to the fans. And it's tough because, you've seen over the past few days, every team has to make very difficult roster decisions, even the team that won the championship. And
Yeah, holy cow. I didn't see that one
yeah, and
coming.
yeah, and I'm sure we'll come back to that one. I'm sure. Um, but it's tough because on a personal level, I love every one of our players,
Same.
from starter, sub, and everything in between. And even where we finished in the standings, it's painful to think about moving on from specific players. And I should say, listen, we'll take questions from the chat. We'll get into some detail, but we're not going to talk about specific roster moves and that sort of thing. It's just too early. But it's a bittersweet time for every organization because you're looking ahead. You're thinking about what the 2021 season looks like and what that opportunity can be, what you can do, what you can accomplish. And at the same time, you're going to have to bid farewell to some players that on a personal level you're incredibly close to, and love every one of these guys. And I hope that's true every year, but particularly this year, the first roster, the first team, even with the way the season ended, every one of them it has a special place for, I think certainly in, for all of us individually, but absolutely as an organization, we'll always look back fondly on this, this first group of guys that we went through season one with.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that. I think when I look at our group of guys, everyone on the roster, every single 7 players, Assault, Silly, GodRx, Asim, Alex, Tiny, Exceed, they all played a part in our season, right? You had Tiny was playing on the Challenger team and streaming. Exceed came off the bench when Alex hurt his thumb. He then finished the season, practicing and playing at playoffs with the team. Like every single one of these guys was in our facility every day. Obviously, there was some breaks in there with the pandemic, and we've been working home for a while now. But I still see these. You'd see these guys all the time. We've grown to love them. The fans have grown to love them. These are guys that when they came here, they didn't have, a huge following. No one really had a huge following that they were bringing with them. And I think that the Minnesota fans, or anyone who's a fan of our franchise, really attached onto those guys pretty quickly. And I think we kind of made a point of treating these guys special. I mean, I remember, I don't have my stand here because it's at the office, but we even got our guys like commemorative, super cool, like RGB stands. It kind of looks like that thing that's going in the background, but it says Minnesota RØKKR founding player, and it says their name and their gamer tag, which we wanted to commemorate these guys in a special way, even before our season started, and now especially that it's coming to an end. I know we can't talk about specifics, but just it's an insane time. If you look at it too, this is a fact. Every single team in the league has to make a roster change because it's going from 5v5 to 4v4. I can't find anywhere about expansion teams, anything like that. I don't know what's going to happen to these players that are dropped off teams or put onto sub. I'm not sure, but that's a pretty unprecedented time. It kind of reminds me of last year. And speaking of last year, Blue Wind in the chat asked, "How is this year's Rostermania similar at all to last year's?" Is there anything we can kind of glean from last year's that's pretty similar to what we're going through now, Brett?
Yeah, well, I think it's good to talk a little bit about how we're approaching it differently because that's good for people to hear. And just to give you a sense of how crazy it is, since we started recording, I've gotten 2 calls from an agent and had to text them and say we're recording a live podcast. Probably can't answer the call.
It's getting pretty serious if they're calling Brett.
Yeah. Well, so as everybody knows, the way we handled Rostermania last year, Ashley did a phenomenal job putting the first roster together. Her and I were tag teaming for agent conversations. Once we brought the coaches on board, which was after we signed Silly, Assault, and GodRx, obviously they put their stamp on things, bringing on Alex and Asim. Going forward, now that the coaches are in place, they're really leading the roster construction. I'm even, a little bit less involved than I was last year, certainly talking to those guys multiple times a day and, talking to, fielding calls from agents. And usually I'm saying, talk to the coaches. They're leading the conversations this time around. But it's, they're going, we're a lot of conversations going on. The way the timing works, you've got, teams have until Sunday at midnight to exercise an option for the second year of the contract. Most players were on contracts or for this past season with a team option for the second season. We have until Sunday night to exercise those options. And then, presumably at some point, we'll disclose, on Monday at some point, which players the options were exercised. Obviously, we're going to talk to the players about that before anything's released publicly. And then that week is negotiation time, right? And it was the same sort of thing last year where there was a period where you could negotiate with players, but you couldn't sign anybody. That's what next week is, where we'll know which players weren't extended by their teams. We'll obviously know which players we kept and how many roster spots we have to fill. And then starting the following Monday, that's when you can actually sign players that aren't currently on your roster. So September 14th is, when true Rostermania starts. You can do, trades can become official then. You can sign players then. But you don't know. Last year, a lot of people thought that players were going to start signing right away, and it took a few weeks really before the market settled and signings materialized. So, right now there's just a lot of teams are filling agents out. Teams are filling each other out. Technically, we can't talk directly to players who haven't been officially released by their teams or haven't been granted permission to talk to other teams. So it's an interesting time for sure. It's the calls are coming fast and furious, and we're it's fun.
It's fun times for sure. One of the questions, we've got a couple questions so far. So guys, I'm actually tracking the chat and keeping an eye on questions. So feel free to float a question. I'll try to pick out some cool ones. The first one is, are you looking back at past Black Ops performance rather than Modern Warfare performance for players given the shift in games? And I think this person might be asking that because the next main developer for the new Call of Duty is Treyarch. Von Dehar's home. Let's go. Big fan of Von and his games. I've been a fan of every single Black Ops game except for Black Ops 1. I just didn't jive with it. But this is honestly a question for the coaches. I think, as Brett said, the coaches are definitely handling a large majority of the roster decisions, movement, players who they think is good. I mean, these guys they're in the scrim room day in, day out. They're analyzing everything. They're watching the gameplay. They know this community better than anyone, so I 1,000% trust in our coaches to make those decisions. It would actually be interesting to know, like, if they are considering, like, if you even look at like 5v5 versus 4v4, Assault and Silly won the most recent 4v4 World Championship. Assault was MVP, by the way. I said it every time, but he was. So I don't know exactly what they're looking at. I would assume there's some recency bias, right? When you have a player that's playing really strong in the latest Call of Duty, there's typically not a huge sophomore slump. Like if you look at Simp going from Black Ops 4, a Treyarch game, into Modern Warfare, pretty different game if you ask me, a different developer. He was still pretty dang good, right? Like, but there's always that chance for drop off. So that would definitely be a better coach's question, but I don't know. Brad, are you looking at performance yourself? Are you looking at kind of what the player wants or what they're looking for in a franchise? What do you kind of look for in a player outside of gameplay?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think anybody that's listened to this podcast knows that I'm not out there like evaluating talent, right? Like we're gonna rely on the coaches for that, and obviously relied on you for that last year, Ashley, and certainly, we're picking your brain from time to time this year too, for sure. From my perspective, and I think this goes for management and all the way up through the ownership level, look, we want to make sure that the coaches have the resources they need to put the right team together. And, we're going to ask questions and we're going to, discuss things. The coaches ultimately are going to rank the talent and talk about what the best combination of players are. Finances enter into it at some point, right? Every team addresses that stuff in their own way. But for the most part, from a management and organizational perspective, we want to make sure that any players that are considering coming here, understand, what the organization's about, what we're looking to, ultimately we're looking to win, right? And it's pretty funny. This conversation comes up from time to time when, someone, we'll be looking at a player and like this same thing happened last year where we're looking, okay, someone will ask the question, what are we trying to do? Do we want like guys with cloud and social media followers and all that stuff? And you know what? Like we want to win. You give us wins and the business side will do the rest is really my philosophy. And I think frankly, I think that's true across any sports. And, those who, certainly reasonable minds can disagree. Right. And like, obviously if we're looking at, hey, if we can get some players that have huge social media following, I'm not going to say no to that. That's not a bad thing, but we want to win. And winning is by far the most important thing for us as an organization. I think it's the most important thing for the fan base. The chat can tell us if they feel differently. And it was a crazy past season, right? It's like we had the highest of high, close to the highest of highs, and then
So
we
close,
had some
dude.
lows. We had some lows, and I think there's nothing we would have wanted more than to be in a position to have those 5 guys be our dynasty into the future. And it's too soon. Like, we're going through this evaluation process, right? Too soon to say, you know, how many guys are part of that roster in the future. Um, Obviously, like we said, every team's gonna have to make some changes, though. It's an interesting time for sure.
Yeah, it
What
really
what
is.
Ashley, what do you think of? Obviously, you've been in the COD scene a lot longer than I have. What's your take on 4v4 purely from a competitive standpoint and how that impacts the game?
4v4 is by far and away better for competitive Call of Duty. Yes, it's tragic. If there's no expansion and there's pro players that are left in the dust, it's a super it's tough. It's a tough time short term for people in that scenario. But long term, if you're looking at competitive Call of Duty as a product, as a love, which it is for me, like 4v4 is better, especially when you're moving into a Treyarch game. 5v5 is very trade heavy, so you'll have people just kind of like hitting stuff really aggressively in search and just trying to win the trade battle. Same type of thing with Hardpoint. In 4v4, the gameplay is slowed down quite a lot more. I implore you guys to go look at some Black Ops 2 gameplay or even some Black Ops 3 gameplay or even World War 2. Those are great 4v4 games to take a look at, like how it kind of changes the pace at which the game is played and the amount of strategy that's needed. For instance, if you're playing Hardpoint on Black Ops 2 or basically any of the CODs that are just listed, and you lose that rotation gunfight, you don't have like one or two other guys like hitting at the same time because they're still contesting or trying to do other things across the map. So when you have less players on the field, or yeah, I just called it the field. If you have less players on the map, the plays that they make are more impactful, positive or negative. And so when you see like someone kill or eliminate 3 people, that's a huge play. Whereas in 5v5, it's like, oh, well, they're probably the person that they eliminate is already respawning, is already like on to the next thing. It creates a more strategic and impactful play, which is, I think, more fun to watch. In the Jetpack Call of Duties and in the 5v5 Call of Duties, I'm not going to lie, a little bit too much going on for me. Like, I'm basically just checking the colors of the kill feed and making sure, like, oh, there was more purple than blue. Sweet. It's not the plays aren't as impactful. Yes, they're a bit more exciting. Yes, it's faster paced, but let's slow it down a little bit. Let's go back to Treyarch 4v4. I'm into it, dude. I'm literally into it. Speaking of that, so one of the questions from the chat, Brett. Crap, I should be writing your guys' names down along with these. I'm so sorry. But someone asked, do we know how many people can be on a roster next year? So currently the minimum is 7. Does that change? Is that public that it could be changing or not? How many people can we have on our team, Brett?
Yeah, the minimum going forward is 5. So
Put
it'd
me in,
be
bro.
4 starters plus 1 sub. One of the changes that personally I think is really positive is we'll call it smoothed out some of the bumps in the road in terms of how substitute players can play on challengers teams, and some of the there were some complications. I would say, best of intentions with how that was set up last year. But the changes that they've made going forward, I think, are really positive. And I think will make it more, you obviously saw far more players coming from the challengers scene and taking starting spots in the league than you saw bench players coming up. Like I could be totally wrong about this.
No, you're right.
I don't other than Exceed, I don't remember a lot of bench players that were elevated into starting spots. And so the way the system's set up going forward is there's more incentive for teams to have some players on the bench that can potentially step into starting roles. but I can't remember if that. Oh, the question was roster numbers. I think the max is still 10. I'm not 100% sure about that.
That's wild. Honestly, let's get let's get 4 just beasts, all right? And then put me as the sub spot. Just like I just want to just one time let me on the map. COD champs, search and destroy, sub me. I'm just kidding. Absolutely don't do that.
Let's do it.
For my reputation and rockers, let's not. Um, here's a question. What is one thing? Oh man, no, I can read. It's just there's a typo. All right, what is one thing that RØKKR did particularly well, and one thing you're looking to improve on moving forward? Shoot. Here I'll take what we did well, and you take what we want to improve on. Does that sound fair? I'll give you the hard one.
It sounds like our styles, right? You're the hype, and
Yeah.
I'm the Debbie Downer. Here's what we got to do better.
Exactly. All right, here's what we did well. I'm very biased. Content. Nailed it. Let's keep nailing it. Let's do even better. I have a lot of really cool ideas for season 2 and just everything that we can do in the off season with this team and just everything that we're doing here. So, very biased. Don't even gas me up in the chat cuz I know like I just cuz I'm right here. Love the content that we did. Love the presence that we were able to have on social media to come in to this season as a brand new franchise, new kids on the block, not a huge social following at all to really pump us up at the beginning, aside from me. I mean, let's go. But the players didn't have too many followers coming on board. And so just the fact that we were able to get where we did this year, follower wise, reach wise, as a brand new face in the space, I'm really proud of that. So as far as like in game though, if we want to talk about like competitive Call of Duty, I would just say it's our guys' like ability to grind and give each other feedback, constructive feedback, without getting like poo pants sad about it or salty, right? Like if Asim's able to say to Assault, and this is I'm just like making stuff up, but if it seems like, hey Assault, like when we do this, it works best when you do it this way, or vice versa, or if Coach Saint comes in and says, hey Alex, in these instances, this is how you need to react, and this is the right way to do it. Like there's no ego, like there's no just brash. Like some players, the coaches words just go over their head or through their like they just don't care. They're so in their tendencies that they don't really allow themselves to change. And although yeah, we had a rough finish to our year, the way that the coaches started off the game, how fast our team learned the game, and just how the guys work together through it, I think it's stuff that not a lot of people get to see other than watching Saga, our exclusive docu-series here on this YouTube. Make sure to subscribe. Other than that, you don't really get to see that in action. But it's a thing. I saw it every day that I was at the office. We have this big whiteboard wall in the scrim room, and they would put goals on it I think it was every week, and they would put different goals, like here's what we're doing right, here's what we're doing wrong. Like it's just seeing that openness and that open communication, even if it's about something negative, and just being able to look at it and say, yeah, we need to fix that. And then seeing them do it was just, that's really positive. So content and the team's attitude are my 2 big takeaways for positive wise this year. Brett, what's one thing you're looking to improve moving forward, whether it's with the team or the organization? What are you looking at?
Yeah, well, so if I could, I'll say a positive thing too, as well. One thing that really stood out for me, especially towards the end, was how much the players got each other's back, especially publicly on social media. It was obviously really tough, with GodRX being benched. But I love the way the other guys got his back, he got their back. He was gassing them up on social media heading into the playoffs. And you don't always see that, and I think that speaks to the level of professionalism that each and every one of these players have. And even you know I think that goes for all of the entire roster, top to bottom. And so that really impressed me, where during tough situations, they still stuck it out and got each other's backs. As we go forward, look, you can't lose your last 10 games and not have things to improve on, right? And I'm not going to psychoanalyze gameplay, or players' mindsets, right? That's for the coaches to do, or for, even if I felt like I was qualified to critique gameplay, I probably wouldn't do it here. But I think even our players and coaches, have said that they felt like they let some winning opportunities late in matches slip away. And so, that's something that, I know the coaches are thinking a lot about in terms of how do we, what do we need to do, um, to close maps out when we're in an advantageous position. And, that's, listen, again, it's true any esport, any sport, right? It's, you know, so many matches and so many games are decided in the final minute or minutes. And I think especially in this league, when you're going from dozens of teams down to 12, and now you're going from, 60 players in the league down to 48. I mean, that skill gap and that talent gap is so small, that those key plays at the end of any, any match, any map are just going to be so important. So, on the business side, and I wouldn't say this is something necessarily like to improve, right? Because I think, and certainly, like, we talk a lot in the organization, we're always constantly trying to improve. But one thing that I'm excited about, that we've been talking a lot about lately, is just starting to plan further ahead and think about our strategies from a business standpoint and a marketing standpoint further into the future. Like, Annie and I were talking about what that process can look like. And that, like, I was like as charged up coming out of that conversation as, as anything in a while. Right. And I think it's, for everybody that works here, we've just, like, the last year and a half has just been such an insane sprint. Right. It's okay, we got a franchise. Now we need to figure out how to put a roster together. Okay, we got Midnight. Midnight, what should we do? Okay, we got some players. Let's throw some content together. All right, we announced a brand. We're hosting the first event in the history of Call of Duty League. Okay, let's take a breath. Nope, there's a global pandemic, and we need to figure out how to function in a global pandemic. And I mean, we've talked about it at length. I'm so proud of our staff and everybody for how everybody's just handled every step of the way of the past year. And now as we look forward, we've got, a Rocket League team, and we're looking ahead to 2021 and what that looks like, not just for Call of Duty and Rocket League, but, thinking about what those next steps are. And it's just exciting times for us as an organization. And so, it's fun. It's fun to look ahead a little bit, especially, now with the first season fully in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, there's so much to look forward to and so much that we're gonna like improve on, especially when I mean this podcast is called Building Minnesota RØKKR, right? It's not even just about the players and the coaches. It's about everything about this organization that we stand for and what we're doing. When you talk about that break, like after launch weekend, I think I remember it all too well. Like, launch weekend was finally done. I remember that week where it was like there was like a 2 week period where I was finally like, oh my gosh, like we can actually like plan things. Not that we didn't plan before, but like actually like not just always be doing and flying or building the plane while you're flying it, but really just kind of settling in and doing that. And then literally the global pandemic hit. We were like, all right, everyone work from home. Let's find out how we efficiently do that. Because luckily, and thank goodness, like CDL is still happening. So finding out and navigating that was tough. And now there's just, I mean, I knew this when I came on board as one of the reasons that I wanted to was because this start. I mean, I was employed too. We have like what about 20 employees now? It's like crazy, and it's there's still so much more that we want to do and that we have to do, not only just in terms of Minnesota RØKKR, but also version 1 and what that means. Like, we have another team, dude. We got twice the content. And you know what sucks is I want to clone myself because the 12th, the All-Star weekend is happening for CDL. Super stoked to watch that, by the way. I can't wait to watch the 1v1s. I hope Scump and Crimsix 1v1. I hope Aches is in there somehow and he 1v1 silly. I just hope there's craziness going on. But that's also the day that V1 plays in regionals, right? So it's just craziness ahead, but in the best possible ways. And now, although it is crazy, we have more time to, start to plan things out, start to really like scope out what's in the near future. So I'm excited for that. All right, another question from the chat. I figured this would be the most popular one, so let's just tackle it, Brett, in the best way we can, with all NDAs signed, of course. Just kidding. With Dallas dropping Clayster, first of all, what? With Dallas dropping Clayster, have you considered the possibility of bringing him in, or have you thought about bringing players with that sort of talent and experience that get dropped?
Yeah, so we can't really talk about specific players, especially players that are under contract with other teams. I can say that we plan to, and again led by our coaches, plan to be very aggressive and to cast a wide net. So, and that's the same thing we did last year, right? I mean, Ashley, I don't think there was a player that was available that you didn't talk to
Pretty
during
much.
free agency. And so, you could list like every player in the league, and most of the time the answer is going to be like, yeah,
Let's
any
talk.
any player that we think can help improve the team, we're going to at least take a look at. And I think somebody of his experience and accomplishments, I'd be surprised if there's any team that has a roster opening that doesn't seriously, have a chat with Mr. Clayster. But we'll see. There's a lot of factors that go into it. He's also a big Packer fan, and like we have a lot of Packer fans on the staff here. But the
Unbelievable.
rumor was his Packer fandom might have scared him away from our team because of the Vikings ownership group. No, I'm kidding. We actually have several Packer fans on the staff here. We're very well.
Unbelievable, bro. I'm a
Yeah,
Vikings fan. All right.
no Vikings logos behind me here. We're NFL agnostic when it comes to roster building.
I'm not. Vikings fans, skull all day. No cheeseheads. I'm just kidding. But really though, skull. So here I'll do two hard balls in a row. Why not? I mean, we're doing an off-season live podcast. So I mean, I hate to be vague, but I do want to like directly answer some of these without getting into specifics. Just a yes or no question. They didn't ask this, but I'll add. Like, do you want me to blink twice for no, or what do you want me to do? Oh my god, now I'm afraid to blink. Has there already been a decision made on who will be cut, or is that still up for debate? Now, obviously, with the team option flex announcement date coming up on, is it Monday? Sunday at midnight? Monday.
Sunday at midnight.
Sunday at midnight. Shout out to Midnights. I don't think we can say, because that's when you might hear some news from us. But Brett, are we able to like should we confront, like, is the assumption that we're keeping all 5 players? Should we say we're not? Like, what do we do?
Oh, this is live. We can't edit. So whatever we say.
Yeah, we absolutely like should like think about what you're gonna say 3 times before you say it.
Yeah. Does someone have their finger on a drop button here?
No, there's no drop button,
I mean,
bro.
Look, yeah, I mean we're not gonna break any news on this podcast here. And frankly, it's right now what every team is doing is trying to understand what the various options are and what the market's going to look like, right? If you think, anytime you're going to make a roster change, you want to make sure you're improving your roster, right? I mean, obviously for every team, one starter will not be back in a starting position. That's simple math. Beyond that, there's a number of different situations that the coaches are considering right now. And what we do on Sunday, could be influenced by other external factors. One thing that our coaches have put a high priority on is communicating with our players. And I certainly hope our players feel the same way, but I think that our coaches have been upfront with our players about what the different scenarios are that could potentially happen, and we're not going to get into detail on what those are here. Listen, you guys, I'm more than happy to you can ask all the questions you want in the chat, and we'll answer them, right?
They want the tea, Brett. We can't spill the tea.
To share as much information as we possibly can
Here's
without
what I'll tell you.
Competitive disadvantage. So
no, yeah, you would never want to show our cards, especially on our YouTube channel. That's the worst. But I will say this, okay? Let's get if you want to percolate your tea, I don't even know that's the thing, but
I love Annie and Cassie giving talking points.
I know, I saw
live in the chat.
I did just put Cassie's question to the top of our queue to get us onto a softball, but I will.
No, hey, listen, I don't mind if if fans want to throw out questions that are player related, it's going to sort of be the same answer every time. But which is also mostly the truth, right? We're still figuring it out.
We really are. It's not, to answer your question, no, we're not sat here with contracts waiting for 4 guys with our roster set for next year. I can tell you that much. What I will say about Rostermania, and this is very broad, okay, so this doesn't even apply to just us, this is across the league, and this is just how Rostermania went last year, and I know it's how it always goes for Rostermania. It always takes that first domino to fall. So right now it feels like everyone's just sitting here like, yo, what's up? Like, what do we, hey, want to go to prom? Oh, you already have a date? Oh, what about you? Oh. And then once that first move happens, it's like a bunch of other things fall into place from there. And I don't even know what that first move is, but, well, I know too much. I think when that first domino falls, that's when you start to see it goes from being real quiet to like boom, everything's happening. And that's what I think the next, once we find out who flexed that second year option next week, that will help put things into perspective. And then truthfully, I mean, it's hard to build a team before the new COD's even out. Maybe it'll take a little bit. Maybe it'll go over, some time. It might not just be all decided next week. So
yeah, and honestly, I think that's right. Like, if I shared my screen right now of like the list that the coaches have of
Brett, your reflection in your glasses.
That could look totally shit. Nope, it's not up. That could look totally different on Monday morning when you find out which players weren't retained by their existing team. So I mean, things move that quickly in Rostermania where. I feel like we need one more week before we do, like, maybe the next podcast we'll talk about some of the crazy stories from the previous Rostermania.
Oh my god,
the ones we never shared.
The roller coaster.
But yeah, there's some fun ones from that. But I feel like the season 1 needs to be 100% officially in the books. Which is a week from Monday is when the new league year technically starts.
Right on, technically. All right, still lots of questions to answer. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. If you haven't already, take the time to subscribe to the channel. We're here all the time. You should be here too. Hit the like button on the stream. Really appreciate that. Get us like sucked up into the algorithm somehow. That'd be sweet. And if you're listening to this on a podcast platform after, you're the best. I hope you're, living your best life. Maybe you're like gardening or driving to work or I don't know. I don't know your life. All right. So question. This actually comes from Cassie, who is she? No, she's technically not our newest hire anymore. Shout out Cassie. She's in communications, which we needed that, Brett. That was kind of like something that Brett and Annie were handling a lot of until she came on board. So she helps us. Brett, you're muted. You're muted. Oh no, does he know he's muted? Chat, how long till he finds out he's muted? There you go.
Hot.
What? Yeah, let's go. We're doing it live. What did you say?
No, I said it's a good thing we have Cassie on board before we said something stupid. I'm amazed that we managed to make it this far without a head of PR, but we're definitely glad that we have her on board now.
Well, yeah, now we're giving her a definite ride by going live during Rostermania, cluing in some decisions and everything like that. She says, "I'm always watching."
We've got some esteemed members of media in the chat as well. So Cassie can watch out for us in the chat there too.
Yeah, she'll get the head start on
Pierre. How you doing?
Shout out Pierre Fox 9. All right, so her question is when can we bring dogs to the office? Which I don't have a dog, but I would also like to know that because I would like other people to bring their dogs to work.
Well, the company that just moved into the office space across from us has a dog, but I think until COVID's over, we probably can't open that door and go, hang out with the neighbor's office dog. That's probably not safe.
Yeah.
You know what? That first day back in the office, Cassie, bring the dog on in. I'm actually allergic to dogs, so unless it's hypoallergenic, like I'm gonna keep even post-COVID, I'll keep a 6-foot radius away from non-allergenic dogs, but hypoallergenic, I mean, oh no, Trevor, cats are definitely not.
What? What about Simba?
No, listen, you can bring your pets, I will not interact with your pets because
Oh, you're
I
super
am
allergic. Damn, you probably shouldn't even hang out with me. I have cat hair all over all my clothes. Um, if you bring your dog, well, post COVID world, when everything's we're all vaccinated or whatever's gonna happen, I will pet your dog. I will be stoked. Does Brett hate pets? No, he just has to have a
no, I
certain
love
type.
pets.
He's allergic to
I'm
them.
actually very upset that I'm allergic to most forms of pets. So
God
otherwise, maybe we'll get a dog still. My wife just walked into the room hearing me talk about getting a dog.
damn. She
I
might.
don't know. I don't know if the live podcast just heard my wife's ultimatum to me. If we get a dog, then I'm in charge of it. So,
Oh boy,
uh,
that's a whole boatload of responsibility.
whose idea was it to do this live? Jeez.
This was literally your idea. All right, so back to the COD questions. Appreciate your guys' questions in the chat. You're all the best. Now we're talking about Godzilla. Let's reel it back in. Will the next season be all online again? I know this is not public information, so I'm not sure
Yeah,
how
I
much
don't
we can
think
say.
that's yeah. So the schedule and some of those details haven't been made public yet. I mean, I can talk a little bit about the philosophy behind it. I mean, look, I think every single person associated with this league, player, staff, leadership at the league level, everybody wants to get back to live events as soon as possible. But it has to be safe to do it. And look, I mean, we could have the top medical experts in the world on this podcast, and they're still not really going to be able to tell you when we can start having live events again. So, you know what? We want it, as much as we want anything. We want to be back in the armory with people chanting. We want to be back at watch parties at, Billy's on Grand or wherever else. But it's got to be safe. And hopefully that time comes sooner rather than later for sure. I do know that the league is spending a lot of time and continues to spend a lot of time, thinking about how to make the online format and the online experience the best it possibly can be for as long as that's the reality that we live in, right? And hey, maybe the world clears up and and we're good to go sooner rather than later. But until then, we'll keep making the best of it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, just ignore the fact that I have a job with one of the CDL franchises for just a second. All right, I'm so thankful that the CDL first season was still able not only to like kick off in Minnesota before everything in the world changed as we know it, but that we were still able to compete online. Yes, it's not ideal. Yes, it doesn't have the most competitive integrity. There's latency, there's problems. I get it. I agree. But given the circumstances we were all put in this year, I'm just so thankful that it was able to happen. We're still able to like do this and have stuff to talk about and like do the watch parties and like be excited about our team. I just think that's so awesome. So I'm thankful. I hope y'all are too. I'm just thankful for esports and video games in general during a time like this. Brett, here's an interesting question, and I think I was a part of like an initial conversation with this with the league a while ago. This was a while ago that this started getting discussed. What can you disclose about the conversations and the decision around the 4v5 or 4v4 5v5 discussion and how the decision for 4v4 was reached? We saw a lot of chatter on social media a couple days ago about not only when this news got released, but just like how did this happen? Are you able to shed any light on how we got to the point where it's going to be 4v4?
Yeah, I can't speak for other teams and what motivated them. I can tell you from our perspective, when the league asked our point of view, we were consistent that we wanted whatever the best product was for competitive Call of Duty. And it felt like in most of the conversations that were had with teams, that was pretty consistent. It's obviously a very tough situation for teams that find themselves in the situation of making roster changes they wouldn't otherwise make with that change. But the the league got a lot of feedback, and really actually where it was left, there's been all the, a lot of chatter on social media about different things where at least, the last conversation that I was a part of with it, it was sort of left at and I remember a lot of coaches saying this particularly, it's about the game and the maps, and that should drive 4v4 or 5v5. And we supported that sentiment. And the recommendation eventually came back that what was best going forward was 4v4. And I haven't heard any. Look, it's a tough situation again for some rosters. I haven't heard a single voice that says that 4v4 is not better for competitive Call of Duty. And there are many people out there that certainly, know that dynamic much better than I do.
Yeah, I think trying 5v5 when we did, it was on Treyarch's game Black Ops 4, and the reasoning behind doing it was to closer mimic the pub's gameplay of Call of Duty. So traditional Call of Duty is 6v6, and they were trying to kind of bridge that gap. And actually, in Treyarch's Black Ops 4, they actually made all regular pub game modes. Like if you went to maybe it wasn't TDM, it was like domination, and any competitive game mode was 5v5 instead of 6v6. So not only were pubs forced to go 5v5 from 6v6, competitive was forced to go up from 4v4 to 5v5. And listen, I think Black Ops 4 was a pretty decent game competitively. Treyarch always does a really good job, but I think it made it much more hectic than it needed to be. And then I think, truthfully, if you want my honest opinion, I feel like it might have been a little better if this decision was made 1 year ago when everyone was a free agent. I think we can all agree on that, but it just didn't work out that way. And I think for the long-term benefit of Call of Duty, 4v4 is the right decision. And that's just like my opinion, man.
Yeah, and it's hard to argue with that sentiment that a year ago when every player was a free agent would have been the right time, and I'm not saying I disagree with that. On the other hand, there just would have been 12 less roster spots a year ago. So,
True, that there would have been
no,
angry people last year as well.
yeah. So, the that would actually be an interesting question for, those 12 starters that aren't on rosters next year. Would they have preferred not to have been on rosters the previous year? I honestly don't know the answer to that, but it's a tough situation. It is. I mean, I can't even imagine if we had won champs and still had to make a roster change. I mean, it's gut wrenching. Like we said
Oh,
at the top of the show. I mean, it's like it feels like impossible decisions on who to part ways with, even when your season didn't finish the way you wanted to, but to finish on that high note, and still have to make moves is tough. And I mean, I will say this. I mean, look, there's obviously people that have been in this scene a lot longer than I have. I find it hard to imagine that there's an owner out there that cares more about his players than Hastro does. So I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of that situation, but I mean, I have all the respect in the world for that organization, and Hastro in particular. And it's a tough situation they're all in, having to make those decisions.
yeah, I agree. I couldn't imagine having to make those decisions. Being forced to change your roster after winning champs, it certainly puts you in a really hard spot. And especially like when you look at that team, you look at Clay and Krim, and how do you even decide? Like, how does that even go down? That's really tough. So I think here's another question: will Saga be continuing for next season? I don't know, Brett. What do you think? I'm just kidding. I'm gonna put you on the spot like that. I say
I
yes.
think that's more you than me. I
Yes.
just watch Saga.
Yes. I am so. I mean, even I will say the pandemic made Saga much more difficult. If you guys don't know, it's our docu-series. It follows and chronicles our team's season, week to week, event to event, all that stuff. It's on our YouTube now. Subscribe. Don't forget. Um, our final episode, dude. I haven't seen a rough cut of it just yet, but I think it might make me cry. The last one made me cry. There's a couple of moments in Saga that made me cry. I mean, obviously, I'm close to the situation and I'm very biased, but I love Saga. I think it's an important series to do, and I think we'll probably do it again next year. I think, or even maybe we'll do it. Hit the like button if you want us to do a Rostermania version of Saga.
Yeah, Ashley, I'll respond to one thing that I see in the chat here, and it's a reasonable question, right? Wicked Chaos is asking about the motivation to 4v4, the move to 4v4 being financial.
Mm-hmm.
Like, look, I've certainly seen that that permeating out there on social media. I can't speak for any other organization and what motivated them to provide whatever feedback they provided to the league. That was not a motivating factor for us. It was purely like our view and our feedback was consistent. What's best for competitive Call of Duty? What puts the best product out there for for the game and for the fans? And that's true. I can't speak for anybody else, but that was our perspective on it.
Well, I think too, like even if I get that if that's a kind of an angle that people are trying to look at and think, well, why is this happening? Like every single like player and coach that I've talked to wants 4v4 for the betterment of competitive Call of Duty long term. I think short term it sucks right now. It really does. There's this is people's livelihood you're talking about. This is their passion. This is what they work for every day. So yes, it sucks and it's tough, but I think it's for the better for competitive Call of Duty as a whole. So yeah, that's my opinion on it. Here's actually a good question because I saw a tweet about this the other day. It was actually just after LA Gorillas announced the re-signing of their coaches Bevels and Ricky. Shout out Rick. How long are the coaches' contracts with the team? Will we have the same coaches for a few years still, or could they leave this year? Um, talk. I don't know how long their deals are, but I know they're still our coaches for this next year, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say, the length of a coach's contract is not something we're we're going to comment on publicly, frankly, ever, right? So, certainly a reasonable question. Our coaches are our coaches, and we've got a ton of confidence in them, and you know, they're you know they're the leaders of putting this roster together and putting a winner together, and beyond that, it's like any other esports team, any other sport. We're all in it together, and we're gonna try to win champs this year, and that's there's not much more to it than that.
Absolutely. So long story long, yes, same coaches. They're building the roster. Rat yeah. Let me see. Ooh, this one looks like a good one. Shout out to the chat for asking great questions. Do you guys have
There,
any?
there are a lot of good ones in
There's a
there.
lot of. I don't know if we're gonna have enough time to get through all of them. So maybe we'll have to do another one of these pretty soon. But do you guys have any plans on making mixed content with V1 and RØKKR? For example, I think making the COD guys play a game of Rocket League would be pretty funny. Lol. Yes. Yes, yes, and yes, times 1,000, yes. Especially now that the Call of Duty off season is upon us. Rocket League has splits for forever, it seems like. The Rocket League will be very active at the end of this year and beginning of next year. So, yes, we've already. Shout out Trevor, shout out Ryan in the chat, any other content specialists here that work for the team that are watching. They've actually brainstormed a ton of amazing, like really cool, like crossover ideas that we could do with the guys. So really excited about that. Once we have a settled roster, yes, 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 yes.
It also probably helps, that now the Rocket League opportunity came together pretty quickly. So there really wasn't much time between, even on the management level, us knowing that we were going to be in Rocket League and us actually being in Rocket League. So, like we talked about earlier, having some time to plan for season two is something we're really excited about. Actually, I've got a question along those lines for you. From your Optic days, I was listening to one of Hector's podcasts, and he was talking about how they mixed players on different teams when they did Vision. Right? Can you talk about that a little bit and what you saw there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you think about Vision from Optic, first of all, I highly recommend you go watch some of like the most viewed episodes. It's it's some of the most emotional like esports docu-series content that you're gonna see, and it's because the fan base behind that team cared so damn much about every aspect of that organization and what it was doing. So Optic had multiple teams. They had like a Gears team, a PUBG team, a Call of Duty team, um, more teams I'm forgetting about, and a content team, and they were getting sponsors. And Vision was an amalgamation of all those things happening at once. So if there was a COD tournament, let's say it was like CWL Anaheim or something, they chronicled like Scump and the team going there and doing that. But then in that same episode, the Gears team went to Mexico and won. How do you cover that in one thing? I don't know, but they did. Like, shout out to Hitch, shout out to Roger, who took over the project eventually too. Like, they combined everything, or even like big sponsor announcements sometimes were made in Vision, because it was really just the entire scope of Vision. The entire scope of Vision covered everything that happened within the organization, and it even came down to like, checking in with me and seeing what I've been streaming lately, or checking in with, the other, like maybe they went and did a Brisk Monte video back in the day and they showed a little bit of that. Like, it was just everything that the organization was doing, kind of just put into one docu-series for fans to get behind. And I think that's something that created a lot of fan affinity for the organization itself. Instead of just being a score that happened, oh, looks like they won in the finals 3-1. Cool. Like, there's so much more to the story than that, and Vision was a really cool way to tell that story and kind of mash everything together. In addition to that, we would do like trivia videos. So maybe Lethal, who's on the Halo team, would team up with Hitch, who's on the content team, and they would be a duo during a trivia video. And that was another way that they created some really cool crossover content there.
That's interesting. Is that common among other organizations? Because oftentimes you hear people talk about how the fan bases are so distinct, and I think we've seen a bit of that just getting into our second title. But that's obviously the more you can cross over, the better it is for the organization if you can do it in the right way.
Yeah, I think I've seen 100 Thieves do some pretty similar stuff. I look at 100 Thieves as kind of being like the content flagship that you're looking at, in terms of broad esports horizon and what they're actually doing with all their content and their whole team, because they have, I mean, a huge focus on their content creators, the streamers, everyone that lives in that 100 Thieves house. But they also have like a Fortnite team, a League of Legends team, and I think that they do in some instances separate them, but they also do keep things together. It's not just one team focus at a time. It's 100 Thieves as an entire organization, which I think is pretty cool. You love this history? Dude, don't get me talking. We're 3 minutes from being over time technically, and I still got like 8 questions to answer. So we can go through. If you guys have any like last minute, I don't know if emergency is the right word, but any last minute questions you want to get in, feel free to put them in the chat now. This is a good question. And this is something Brett and I talk about a lot, and just everyone here at the organization. What has it been like building a parent organization above RØKKR and V1? It's cool to see you all start with teams first, then the larger org. Most esports orgs do it the other way around, which is true. Like, you have like your NRGs, and then Huntsman, Shock, like all that. Like, we're doing it the other way. We're going up. And talk a little bit about like what that's been like for us, Brett, because you've been here since day 0. I've been here since day 1. You've been here day 0.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it is obviously very different from what other organizations have done, but it's also by necessity, right? When we first started, we always knew that we wanted to expand and grow beyond Call of Duty. RØKKR, and it wasn't even RØKKR at the time, that was our first step. But it was also extremely important for us to get that right. We didn't want to grow too fast, to get over our skis, and not establish the foundation that we needed to with RØKKR. And so we wanted to spend the first year laser focused on Call of Duty League, laser focused on building this first brand. There was an enormous, a year ago, Ashley and I were the only staff. I think next week is probably like, so at some point I think that's about the time last year that Annie came on board. So we had to hire staff. We had to, be very thoughtful about what positions we filled in what order and all of the things that we were looking to accomplish. We wanted to make sure we did it in the right way, in the right order. And we always looked at this window about a year later as that window to start expanding beyond just COD. We were fortunate that the opportunity came up with the former Cloud9 roster getting into Rocket League. Um, Obviously, we didn't think we were going to be trying to figure that stuff out in global pandemic, but we're excited for the future. But it's definitely different. Yeah, Ashley, would love your perspective. Obviously, having come from an organization that was as big and as broad as Optic and then Infinite.
Yeah, it's really cool to kind of do it the other way around. I think I've said that to you before. Like I've not maybe there might be other instances of this happening before, but when the CDL team, the Minnesota RØKKR name, that is a CDL only team, right? So the need to have a bigger name than that, it's there. And so building what that looks like okay, like and this is like I said at the beginning, this is one of the reasons that I was so excited to join this team is because when I talked with the organization, talked with you, talked with the ownership group about like, okay, where are you going? Like, where's your roadmap? Like, what are you doing? Like, they're not just throwing their hat in the ring and being like, cool, we're in COD now, let's have fun. Like, they're like, hey, yeah, so year 2 we want to do this, year 3 we're looking at this. Like, we want to move this in the right way, and we're looking for people to like help us do that. And when I'm looking at the scope of the like 1 year ago is just you and I sitting in your office at the time at the Vikings, which was like side note bucket list item for me that I didn't even know I'd get to complete. But now a year later, with how much we've accomplished in a year, which there's still a lot we could do, but we've accomplished quite a lot in our young lifespan of this company. Knowing what we're looking at the next year, the next 2 years, 3 years, what the actual objective is beyond Minnesota RØKKR is extremely exciting for me, and it's something that everyone who's a part of this organization, whether you're someone in here working every single day, or you pick up you're a contractor for a project real quick, or you're a player and you play, or if you're a fan watching, you're all a part of this thing that's becoming bigger and kind of literally, instead of just RØKKR dropping out of this bigger cloud, we're going up into it, dude. And it's just, I don't know, it's just really exciting from my POV, obviously being like on the ride. It's very exciting. But even if I was a fan of a team and I'm like, oh, they're about to go like bigger, that's cool. Like, let's see what this brings. And so the people who do realize that and are kind of along for the ride with us, I really appreciate it because it's really exciting.
Yeah, and it's what's really fun about it is we get to take the things that have made the last year just so exciting and so special and do them all over again, right? And like, in what other industry do you have that opportunity where we've started two teams, two organizations, two brands that didn't exist? I mean, I haven't seen Dane in the chat at all, but
Shout
Dane
out
has
Dane.
designed two logos that the world would have never seen if this wasn't a thing, and that's amazing. It's interesting. So I've been listening a bit to like my go-to podcast recently that I've been listening to when I'm like, usually it's on the weekends, like mowing the lawn or driving around doing errands. Has been the podcast that Hex does with Andy Miller. So they're co-CEOs at NRG, obviously parent company of Huntsman. And somebody asked them in their podcast if they could get into two esports as their first two moves, what would they be? And obviously Hector's going to say COD, but even Andy said Call of Duty and Rocket League, which really, hearing two iconic figures in the scene say that those would be their first two moves makes us feel pretty good about the moves that we've made in the first year and the direction that we can take this thing.
I would agree with their opinion. I think Call of Duty and Rocket League, although they're pretty different, I think they're both really cool and unique esports that could broadly attract, more than just the hardcore esports fans, which is important. That's where you want to build your foundation off of. But having that mainstream appeal, I just see that for both COD and Rocket League. I think it's really cool, and especially like with Rocket League, not to get too far off the rocker ship here, but the cool stuff that we can do each week with our grid broadcast, the caliber of players we got dropping into this as our first season, like they're nasty. So yeah, I'm really excited about both teams and where we grow from here as far as not only just those two teams, but the parent brand as a whole, because there's a lot of cool stuff coming. Brett, if I don't cut us off now, I'll let you say one more thing. But if I don't cut us now, we'll never stop talking. We'll never get off the podcast. So
I think we should just keep going until the chat is just empty, like just
that is a
zero viewers, and then we'll shut down.
Brett, I feel like you'd be a good streamer to do a subathon. You know what that is? It's like every person that subscribes or like does something, like gives you bits or whatever, gifts a sub, adds like more minutes to your total stream time. I've seen people do 24-hour streams with that mentality or that kind of setup. So, yeah, Cassie's like, all right, listen, hey, I don't know how. I scheduled this for 45 minutes. It's been an hour and 4. I should have known. Me and Brett are chatty Cathy's. You guys had some great questions in the chat. Brett, what should we leave these folks with before going back? And I'm sure you have like 3 agents to talk to and Rostermania to suss through and figure it out.
Oh man, I mean, I think I can't imagine that anybody that's listening or watching at this point has not heard us say it, but just can't. Sorry, I'm laughing at Annie's and Cassie and Allie all chiming in the chat. Yeah, everybody chiming in.
They're like, we're here.
Yeah, they just don't want to have our 4 p.m. meeting. That's all. No, I can't imagine that anybody hasn't heard us say this, but from the bottom of our hearts, can't express how much we appreciate the support that we've had from the fans and this organization. Since the start, right? When it was Call of Duty North and we're just like posting gifs and emojis and bantering back and forth with Toronto about like, just posting latitude and longitude, all the way through launch weekend and the watch parties. I mean, it's just, the support has been amazing, and can't express how much we appreciate it. So, we'll keep doing this periodically. I think the podcast is going to evolve over time because it can't be Building Minnesota RØKKR forever, and we've got some other stuff coming down the pipe. But
you said it. I was gonna say it, but now I was gonna say it, but now you said it, guys. The podcast is gonna get even better. That's all I'm gonna say. We're gonna have even better podcasts for you to listen to. Still. I mean, the chat, instead of putting last-minute questions, they were all like, more Q&A. So I think we'll have to hop on here again. Maybe we'll do some, I don't know if you guys like it, video ones where it's in person, kind of, or Reddit AMAs stuff. We'll try to keep open with you guys. And maybe, once there is some roster movement, we'll be on here again to talk about that.
Yeah, we'll have to have the coaches back on at some point, too.
Yeah, I think a lot of...
Yeah, definitely people should keep an eye on, early next week for some news, and we'll have coaches talking about what free agency looks like and all that good stuff.
Yep, it's going to be crazy.
Lots of good content coming this offseason.
Yes, I actually have to film something tomorrow. You guys will see next week about it. So stay tuned, whether it's on YouTube or other social channels. If you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, shout out to you if you made it to the end. Hit us with a rating. If you're watching on the YouTube, make sure you subscribe in case you're not already. Hit the like button because, of course, you liked it. I liked it. I actually already did literally like the video. Shout out to myself. But appreciate all the support. As Brett said, your guys' support has been insane for season 1. I did a sappy tweet about this on my Twitter this last week because I think it was like one year. I can't remember what the 1 year anniversary. There's so many 1 year anniversaries coming up in regards to things that happened with this organization. But it's just been really amazing to see the support on such a brand new face and brand and group of people. And you guys have latched on quickly, and it's awesome to see. So hope you guys are along for the ride with us. We'll catch you guys next time. We only went 20 minutes over, Brett. Not bad for us.
Not bad.
All right, we'll catch you guys later. Thank you so much for watching.